The umbrella term Afrobeats is used to refer to different popular music played on the west coast of Africa. Now, not to be confused with Afrobeat as pioneered by Fela Kuti. Afrobeats, that's Afrobeat with an S, like they say, has taken over. These are my thoughts. Now, welcome into my music space, and like I usually say, this is where I discuss music from my point of view. Now, if you like what we do, please give us a like, subscribe, and possibly just hit the bells to get notifications as new videos drop. So let's go. Now, these are my thoughts on Afrobeats. Now, music has a way of evolving from one form to another. Now, there are different factors responsible for this evolution. Some of these factors may include, but not limited to, the preference of the producer, the composer, and even the performer, and what the listeners themselves like. And most importantly, what variant of music they prefer. Now, it is important for me to say this, that no artist developed without listening or imitating somebody else. But what happens is that most artists, when they start by imitating and listening and copying what somebody is doing, they eventually go ahead to, come out with what they refer to as their own style. Even the great Michael Jackson was influenced by people like D. James Brown, Jackie Wilson, Sammy Davis Jr., the Isley Brothers, and even Diana Ross. But he went on to eventually evolve his style and became the king of pop. Even his dance moves were influenced by the great Fred Astaire. Now, talking about Afrobeat as pioneered by the great Fela Anikulapo Kuti, even in his early days, Fela played a combination of jazz and highlife hybrid, that was during the Kula Lobito days. But eventually, alongside Tony Allen, they will go on to develop a style that combined this with soul, funk, and even juju music. That's what became Afrobeat, and it was heavily influenced by African polyrhythms. What was interesting for me was around the time that Fela was creating this, another musical great was also experimenting with a combination of African music and American music, and that was Orlando Julius Ekemode. Now, the funny thing is that Orlando Julius' style, Afro Soul and Afro Highlife, was also later referred to as Afrobeat. Perhaps they influenced each other, perhaps not. But I remember seeing an interview where Orlando Julius said that he used to invite Fela to jam with his band anytime he visited them while the band was performing in Ibadan. But the point I'm trying to make is that this is an example of two different people developing different styles similar to each other, and both of them, both Orlando Julius' Afro Soul or Afro Highlife and Fela Kuti's Afrobeat, were both referred to eventually as Afrobeat. So like I said earlier, Afrobeats today is a term used as an umbrella to cover different types of music. So you might have a song that is really reggae influenced with African lyrics and a bit of Nigerian percussion, and it will be referred to as Afrobeats. A look from where we were to where we are today might make the observer to conclude that this might be very unfair. So, for example, rap and hip-hop started in the United States in the 70s, and by 1980, Ron Ekundayo, then of Radio Nigeria, also known as Ronnie, had put rap on tape. Others, I think Dizzy Falola released another rap music song in 1981 and 1982, I can't remember now. But even up until 1988, when Sound on Sound released their album, rap music from Nigeria were just straight out copies of what the Americans were doing. This all changed in 1991 when a group of young guys called Emphasis released a song titled Which One You Dey. Now, this song was more widely accepted. Why, you may ask? Because the instrumentation, delivery, and language were all indigenous. With production credit by Kingsley Ogoro, this rap song done in Pidgin English was more widely accepted. Now, by the time Junior and Pretty released Monica in 1991, rap music was already moving into mainstream and people were more receptive towards it. Now, this continued even until Remedies released Mio Shakomo in 1999, and then rap music became mainstream. Now, the next example I want to give is to show that the music can evolve from one form to another, retaining its core characteristics but taking different forms. By the time Blackie was releasing Rosie, reggae music in Nigeria had already gone through its own types of changes. Reggae music has played by its early exponents like Majek Fashek, Raskimono, The Mandators, Eviedna Ogoli, and co. was already taking different forms. I remember when Chakademos and Pliers made its inroad into Nigeria, and of course that combination of reggae, dancehall, dubs, and ragamuffin was already taking stage. I mean, everybody remembers Mr. Ragamuffin himself, Danny Wilson, who brought another dimension to it. Now, of course, that shows you that music changes over time, and by the time it hit the ghetto, for example, people like Daddy Fresh and Daddy Shoki, the pretty I think they were called Pretty Busy Boys. He had Cashman Davids, he had Sexy Pretty. They came with their own version of dance or reggae, and they called it Galala. Of course, with great helps from that great man in Ajegule, Mighty Mouse, and the Jawa studio. And that generally changed the form of what reggae dancehall music was in Nigeria. Now my thoughts on Afrobeats. The term Afrobeat was coined by some DJs, I think, from in the UK to refer to music that was coming out of the motherland. People like DJ Abrante used, their platform on Choice FM to push such music. And there are some similarities between Afrobeat and Afrobeat. Food for thought. I read an article in Teen Vogue written by Aaron Cohen, and it states, and it refers to Afrobeat as a jubilant party music that draws on West African sources, using hybrid language, popularized rhythm, mixing them with delivery and tones from across America, referencing hip-hop and Jamaican dancehall. Now, remember what we said about Afrobeat as played by Fela Kuti. We said it was a combination of African rhythms, African music with American music like jazz, funk, and soul. So there lies the similarity. I personally don't like it when every artist, irrespective of your style or type of music, is lumped under the banner of Afrobeat. Artists like M.I. or Ladipo in the international scenes will no longer be referred to as rappers, but as Afrobeat artists. Perhaps we could have done better in defining and naming these new waves. I remember that in the past there was, during my time being active in music, there was an attempt by us to create what was called Afro Hip Hop. I mean, Afro Hip Hop Society then had cats from Festac, like Defo Clan, like the Plantation Boys, like us that were representing Akoka and we were all trying to define what the new thing we were doing was. Fela's Afrobeat is quite different from today's Afrobeats that is driven by dancehall, R&B, and hip-hop. Fela's was driven by heavy African polyrhythms, even though he had borrowed influence. When we fail in properly defining and naming what we are creating, we give rooms for others, to name it how they like or define it how they like. So my thought is that we need to guard jealously these new sounds coming out from us. The Western world has a penchant for forcing things down our throat and making us feel like everything from them is the best. Like I said earlier, I am not comfortable with the fact that all this genre of music are being chucked under the headline or the umbrella of Afrobeats. Music needs to be defined along the lines of what it represents. It can take a new form. For example, reggae music, when it came to Nigeria, was indigenized, and people like Majek Fashek added Nigerian instruments to it, but it didn't take it away from being reggae music. Should that have been referred to as Afrobeat? No, it was still reggae music. What we need to do is to always make bold statements as concerning to the ownership of these new sounds we are dishing out. We might have borrowed some from them, but most of these new things is our own creations, and we need to guide it jealously. Thank you again for joining me in my music space. And like I usually say, please, if you like this content, please like, subscribe, and hit the bells to get notifications as new videos drop. See you very soon. God bless.